Welcome to Sat Interviews. Today we sit down with Pumela Salela, who is the head of Brand South Africa UK. We sit down with her to understand the objectives of the organization, its impact on FDI inflow, and all the other great objectives that the entity has. And I hope you will enjoy this episode as we sit down and explore the many works that she is doing here in the UK. Welcome again to Sat Interviews with your host, Farai Muvuti. Pumela, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great to have you. Pumela, your story is quite intriguing. You are a woman from South Africa, born and raised in South Africa. You find yourself in many institutions, including the World Bank, the government of itself in South Africa, in the economic development policy departments. You navigate in these strong institutions and find yourself here at the helm of Brand South Africa, the custodian of the marketing, the very reputation of your country. How do you get there?
It starts with a dream, and it also starts with a heart of servitude, wanting to serve our people. And then following on with the dream that one has, and also putting in the work through the academic investment that you make and hard work.
So, of course, now this sounds very flowery and beautiful, but I think there's a deeper aspect to it, considering how our societies, African societies, are still wrestling with the aspect of a patriarchal society. And tell us about some of those challenges that you had to face, and how did you navigate them?
I think I have actually been very fortunate in the sense that I have realized that we can coexist with men. It's not about, fighting men at all costs. And some young people don't understand me when I say that. Firstly, the likelihood is that every man has been born of a woman. And so the first point of contact that a man has is a woman. And if we go to men without fighting them, but going with the sense of finding out what is your win, what is my win, and negotiating our wins so that each of us get our wins. And also mutual respect. If we're going from a level of mutual respect, it is possible to coexist with men. Right.
So I'd like to take you back a little. How do your upbringing, where does this journey begin?
Humble beginnings. I was born in a one-roomed house. When I say one room, this is where you cook, you eat, you sleep in one room. My parents had just been recently married, and the conditions at the time were such that if you were a black South African, because of Group Areas Act, you were limited in terms of where you could live within South Africa. So then you will find that most black South Africans then were born in townships or in rural areas. And so I was born in a township in the Eastern Cape called Ngangelizwe location. And I'm mentioning this so that a child that is born in Ngangelizwe today, because Ngangelizwe township is considered one of the poorest of the poor townships within the Eastern Cape, can know that it's possible. It's possible to dream, it's possible to rise, and it's possible to achieve. So from there, I think, but more than anything, what has grounded me is the values of my parents. Because I remember I used to cry to say, why can't we live in a big house? But I only started crying when I went to the so-called Model C school, the schools that were never previously open to black children. And it was actually some of the black children which were laughing at me that I wasn't coming from a big house. And I remember going home and crying to my mom that why are we not living in a big house, because other children are teasing me. And my mother said, my child, a house is not a home. A home is about the people inside. It's about the love that they have for each other. It's about the care that they have for each other. We might not have a big house, but because of the love that we have and the values that we have a home, and that is what is important. And she also said that right now they were focusing on me getting the best education at the time, because I was never going to be young again. And then they said later on I would be able to then achieve the things that they have not been able to achieve, because you cannot go back to you cannot change, go back to the hands of time. And really now I see the investment that my parents made, particularly my mother, who had to, in addition to her being a teacher, she used to grow spinach and sell it. And I also used to go on the streets and sell the spinach. She used to sell perfumes. She would sell anything and everything, my mother, to compensate the income so that I could go to the best schools. And my father played that supportive role, helping me with my homework, walking me to school because there was no car, but being present as well. So I grew up with a present father and a present mother, but each of them bringing strengths into my upbringing and the relationship that they had with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for such a wonderful story and giving us a sense of a background as to your upbringing, because I think one of the things you pointed to is the importance of that foundational aspect, isn't it? And you clearly say present father, present mother. And so during this time, you alluded to it earlier, it's during a dark period in South African history, which is apartheid. What was the impact of that in your upbringing, would you say? Was it part of the reasons why you have such a strong driving force to see change for your own country?
I actually, when I grew up during the time when the country was talking reconciliation. So I went to high school in the 1990s. That's when I went to high school. And there was Utatu Nelson Mandela, who was preaching as the first first black president of South Africa, who was preaching the spirit of reconciliation. And he somehow managed to get us as a country to be able to move beyond that which had divided us to that which united us. And we also had Archbishop Desmond Tutu coining the term Rainbow Nation. So I grew up in that area, in that period that said we might have had our differences, however, it's possible for us to move forward. But I never lost my identity, and this is why. When I went to the previously white schools, my parents sat me down and they said to me, look, our child, you are an African. You are an African and you are going to this environment that is different. Go to that environment and take the best out of that environment and combine it with the best of your being African. And that also helped me, and it shaped me, that I could be able to go in an environment and not adopt the things that would not work for me and my values, and only take the things that would sort of launch me in a global space later, and combine them with the best of being African. My mother always emphasized this thing that without being angry, that my child, you are African. And I remember at the age of 12, she booked a movie for me, and I didn't know what the movie was about. She asked my dad to go and drop me in the movie house, and when I got there, the movie was Cry Freedom. In fact, the film was Cry Freedom, and she just left me there to make my own meaning, to make my own interpretation, and she never asked me anything. She never interrogated me. She just asked my dad to drop me at the movies, and I watched that, and that is what shaped me. Watching that and realizing that, the atrocities that another human being can do on another human being, and I said I don't want to be part of that. But somehow, though, doing it in a way that's not full of anger. Doing it in a way that's not full of resentment. Because again, remember I said I grew up in the era of Nelson Mandela. So if he could stay in jail for 27 years and not be angry, who am I, who was just born, much more later than when he went to prison?
So as you interpret that movie, I want to go into this. But before we do so, ladies and gentlemen, we need to take a quick commercial break. Keep it locked here with SAT Interviews.
Introducing Sawi, the chatbot from Nyaradzo. Speak to Sawi for all your queries and inquiries. The benefits of having Sawi by your side are endless. When you need to know about our policy, Nyaradzo products, payment platforms, claims, the Sawira International Plan, where to find the Nyaradzo branches, Nyaradzo contact details, how to apply, and any questions you may have. And she can help you find who you want to speak to. For your convenience, you can ask about anything, from our funeral services, counseling to your payments, and much more. Experience the benefit of having Sawi by your side. App Sawi today on WhatsApp number 0712 992 892. Nyaradzo, Sawira Mukuru, Omgane Omkulu.
Welcome back. Now, we were talking about the story of you being left to watch a movie, an incredible, legendary movie at that, and left to deduce from it the story you were going to, that was going to define you. And you said that was the foundation, that was the moment of change. I wanted to know, what are the principles that you deduced from the movie, and how have you implemented them in your journey so far?
So that film was about Steve Biko,
Yes.
and the life of Steve Biko.
Yes.
And Steve Biko is the one who was, propagating that Black people should be proud of themselves and not try to be, anything else. And this is why, their consciousness, and proudly so. And again, sometimes people mistake pride with arrogance. And this is also sometimes what I find with me now being proudly African. And people think that being proudly African means you are anti other cultures, whereas it's not. It's about identity. So from that film, I got a sense of identity, that as a Black child, I'm worth it. And as a Black child, I can stand for my values, for my principles. And again, as I interpret it now, I am proudly African, but it does not mean that I don't believe in the coexistence and coexisting with other cultures. It's just being about proud of one's identity, because no matter where I go in the world, I will be identified as an African. And why not own it, be proud about it? But more than anything, there's a lot that we have as Africans that is unique to us, and that we ourselves should be proud of and take to the world. And you find that more and more the world is actually looking to Africa for healing, for our ancient wisdom, for that which we had from our forefathers. So it's just about being proud, in our roots, if I may put it that way.
Yeah, and that's brilliantly put. It's kind of befitting to be talking about, the pride of Africa, getting a sense of identity, considering that you currently head Brown South Africa. My question is, okay, great, now you are in the UK. You have, of course, you've worked in quite a number of institutions that as I mentioned earlier. Now, what makes up part of your role being in the UK? What's the objective? What's the goal in terms of the work you do with Brown South Africa in the UK? How do you push that? What does it necessarily translate to?
The work that I do is twofold.
Yeah.
One is that we try to engage with stakeholders, and stakeholders we differentiate according to stakeholders who are government, stakeholders who are non-profit organizations and non-governmental organizations, and stakeholders who are the business sector or private sector. So we try and engage with them and see how we can collaborate as the two countries, and try to seek opportunities for investments in South Africa by any of these stakeholders. You'll be surprised that the non-profit sector actually also does a lot of work in our country in the sense of, complementing what the private sector and government are doing. For example, entering areas of education, providing scholarships to make sure that young people are educated, or just identifying gaps within different communities within South Africa and making the necessary interventions. So that's the stakeholder management side of things, and also trying to position South Africa is a globally competitive nation that is fit and ripe for investment. So that's our constant messaging. As I said, still also trying to find areas of collaboration with any of these stakeholders. So that's pillar one. Pillar two is mobilizing what we call global South Africans.
Right.
These are South Africans who may have left South Africa and are based in the United Kingdom. And we try to rally them so that they also have a sense of identity of where they come from, because you cannot shake that from yourself.
Yeah.
And then secondly, asking them to play that role of being brand ambassadors of their country of origin, because they may be the only people that interact with people from other countries, and they have to be empowered to speak for the country that they come from, which in this case is South Africa. So we encourage them to fly the flag despite being outside South Africa. But we also engage with what we call Friends of South Africa. These are people who firstly were there for South Africa in the past when South Africa was going through its struggles for freedom. Others are part of the anti-apartheid movement, and others are just people who believe in South Africa. So we engage with those as well, because they're playing a vital role in the messaging and in the establishing of relationships between the two countries. And we also want to keep the momentum of those who have helped us in the past, so that they still form part of our family as we move the country forward.
And how effective, I think on tier two, let's start with tier two perhaps, which is the area of working with South Africans that are abroad. You're part of your diaspora. How effective has that been? We have a lot of discussions around the impact of the diaspora in its totality, considering, I think it was a World Bank report that talked about how the diaspora has been able to double what the continent gets in FDI inflow. And I wonder how effective has Brand South Africa been when it comes to rallying its own diaspora?
I think when we talk about the diaspora, we should also move, apart from talking about it from a financial contribution point of view in the form of remittances, we should also start engaging with them in terms of they are realizing that their skills matter, that their time matters, that the gift of service that they can give back to their country matters. Because what I find is that with the diaspora, some of them, if you're just talking about the notion of plowing back being only money, going back home, as you know, it's a struggle to be outside Africa. It's a lot of hard work. So people don't always have the money to bring back. So what we need to encourage, and what we encourage, is that your time is your gift. Your skill is a gift. Your effort is a gift. For example, let's say you've taken a holiday from the United Kingdom and you're going to South Africa for the summer. You can go and help children with mathematics in a school, if that's your area of strength, and just offer that on a voluntary level. It will make a difference in the end. So for me, the contribution of that diaspora consists of all of this. Yes, the remittances, and I do encourage the diaspora, as you say, to also contribute in FDI. One of the most successful countries actually in the world once used its diaspora to invest in the country, and what they did was for every investment that a diasporian, let me put it that way, brought, they gave them a commission. But I'm not saying I'm purporting that that's what should be done. I'm just sharing that diaspora itself can be able to be active, propellers of foreign direct investment, because they already know the country that they come from. So it's very easy for me to sell a country that I come from if I'm a member of a diaspora. Because you know it very well. And that's what we should encourage across the continent.
And do you find that relatively effective so far with your engagement with the South African diaspora, in as far as be it contributing via skills, via remittances, as you so rightly pointed out? Have you found that to be effective through Brand South Africa?
Yes. I think people needed like a propeller, something that gives them hope. that, look, even if you've left your country of birth, you can still belong, and programs that you do as a diaspora, as the global South Africans, by playing your part back home, allow you to still have a sense of being rooted, a sense of rootedness in South Africa whilst you are based in another country. So for me, bringing this formula that says you can contribute, you can play your part. One of the campaigns we have is play your part. So do whatever little good you can in whatever corner for the betterment of your country, whether you are living inside it or outside it.
That's great. Now, Pumela, you have a number of high-ranking institutions. Like earlier, we talked about the Rockefeller Foundation. You have been awarded and lauded for your leadership. One wonders, everything that you said, I sort of get a thread here that it's steeped in identity, it's steeped in culture. How do you get to this point, and what inspires that sense of leadership to the point that it's been effective clearly by the virtue of you being lauded and receiving so many awards? What underpins it? What motivates it? What drives that?
My greatest influencer, if I may put it that way, has been Nelson Mandela. But because of his leadership, because of his leadership style, I've always admired, his approach to leadership. But I say, one thing, that if I'm in a situation, I am a Christian, and so if I'm in a situation that is very difficult to resolve, or maybe a conflict situation, I ask myself two questions. I ask myself, what would Jesus have done in this case? That's the first question. And the second question is, what would Nelson Mandela have done in this case? Because he had a fair sense of leadership, but also not I'm going to call it a no-nonsense approach, yet still humane, yet still approachable, yet still a problem solver. So I gain a lot of inspiration from his type of leadership. But for me, as a person, I believe in authentic leadership, where I show up as myself, not trying to be anybody else. And I also believe in a servitude kind of leadership, where if as a leader, you sort of immerse yourself with the people for you to be able to connect with them on a heart-to-heart basis, versus sometimes mind or title-based basis. And that nothing can ever replace that human connection at a heart-to-heart level. That is my approach to leadership. And I also believe in every situation making sure that we both define our wins, and then we create win-win situations. And that helps me in even my relationships, which have sustained over a long period of time, because there's no sense of me being a parasite in a relationship. A person will know that it's a mutually beneficial relationship, but also underpinned by respect for humanity above all things, regardless of which race, which religion, which culture you come from. For me, respect is very important when we deal with each other as humans.
Great. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. Thank you for joining us so far. Join us again in a few minutes.
Introducing Sawi, the chatbot from Nyaradzo. Speak to Sawi for all your queries and inquiries. The benefits of having Sawi by your side are endless. When you need to know about our policy, Nyaradzo products, payment platforms, claims, the Sawira International Plan, where to find the Nyaradzo branches, Nyaradzo contact details, how to apply, and any questions you may have. And she can help you find who you want to speak to. For your convenience, you can ask about anything, from our funeral services, counseling to your payments, and much more. Experience the benefit of having Sawi by your side. App Sawi today on WhatsApp number 0712 992 892. Nyaradzo, Sawira Mukuru, Omgane Omkulu.
Welcome back to SAT Interviews. Listen, Pumela, this has been interesting. So I think as we go into the final section of our discussion, one of the areas that I wanted to explore, because earlier when we started the conversation, we talked about, being a woman in Africa, coming up the ranks of very high-ranking institutions. You've worked for the World Bank, you've worked for government itself, and currently you head Brand South Africa in the UK. And it's not an easy feat, I'm sure. Now, talk about institution building for a black woman in Africa making her way to the heights of power that you're currently in the UK, and having to sort out an institution that virtually is young. I mean, I think it's 2006 when Brand South Africa comes about, if I'm not mistaken.
It was formed in 2002 as an organization.
And as an organization.
Yes.
So relatively young, and here you are now meant to establish this huge brand and this huge responsibility here. What are the aspects, or what are the principles of system building, institution building that you employed to get to the point of success that you're currently experiencing?
The simplest answer would be being a foot soldier.
Right.
Because everything is about people that you meet. And for me, when I started with this role, I was literally, and I still am, on the ground, meeting people, meeting other institutions, meeting other leaders, meeting other organizations as a starting point. And then secondly, when meeting those, whether it's individuals or organizations, finding areas of commonality so that we can build mutually beneficial organizations. For me, I can never underplay or underestimate the power of what I call divine connections, because you usually meet the right person at the right time, at the right place to link you into what you need. But it's about being open, open with your spiritual eyes, open with your spiritual ears, to be able to know who you should engage with for the betterment of what you are trying to achieve as well. So for me, that's a starting point. When I arrived here, I would look for events, organizations whose mandate are in line with what we as an organization are trying to achieve, and then really proactively going out to them and saying, you are standing for this, we are standing for this, can we find areas of collaboration? Right. And then take it from there.
And what have been the successes so far, considering that Brand South Africa has been everywhere in the UK? I mean, any events, any corporate events. I remember I recently saw you at the Africa Centre, at the relaunch of the Africa Centre, and Brand South Africa was well represented there. But more so, you have been a force here in many local institutions that are whose value systems are underpinned by mutual beneficiation for Africa. So talk about that a little. I mean, the success here. What have been the results of it, and how do we get to this point?
First and foremost, it has resulted in investments in South Africa in the form of the sectors of the economy where there are opportunities. So one of the things that I do, and sometimes behind closed doors, is investor engagement, and where we take a sector of the economy in South Africa and showcase it to potential investors, who in turn go to the country and make those necessary investments. And South Africa has got very good incentive schemes for investors. So we've been able to facilitate that for various investors across different sectors of the economy. Like, for example, now energy is a big sector focus. So we've been able to host investor roundtables presenting the energy opportunity, and other sectors like agro-processing. So we do engage with business and make sure that there are investments that go into the country. So that's the first. And then when it comes to the continent, we align ourselves with the whole continent, because we also believe you cannot have a successful South Africa as an island of its own within a broader continent. As a country, we believe in Africa's regional integration, where as Africans we are able to collaborate for the success of the continent, as it were. So what you would then find is that within the UK, when I speak, I not only speak as South Africa, but I speak for the whole continent. Firstly, from an individual point of view, and then secondly, from an organizational point of view, because we believe that, you know, the whole of Africa must succeed.
And this is quite interesting. I mean, and I like the fact that you introduced the Africa aspect to it. But I simply want to go back to the energy sector in South Africa and the many changes there. I think one of the questions that I would have, in light of the many changes that the energy sector is going through, well, how has the your engagement with investment been going at the backdrop of climate change concerns and so forth?
As a country, we are now making an allowance for renewable energy. So that is the focus. And what you find then is that within the West, there are some investors who are already experienced in renewable energies from the technology point of view and the technical know-how. And then what you find is that in Africa, we have the sort of like natural resources to enable renewable energy, like solar, like wind, you know. So the match of those is what then determines the success of the energy sector within the continent. So those are some of the things we are looking at, and sometimes things that we were not aware of, like the role of waste management even in energy, because then it becomes that circular economy that allows the management of waste to be turned into energy. So it's about the sharing of skills and know-how whilst making the necessary investments.
Wow. And I suppose leading to my final question, because it's been very very interesting discussion, but I'm also aware that I do not have you forever, in as much as I'd like to. So you have been a powerful force in terms of your work ethic and what you've been able to contribute to not only the organization but your country at large. Now, one of the reasons why I was passionate about this particular interview is because the concern of the girl child, humanizing the girl child, and Africa policymakers and as well as businesses ourselves, people in business, doing better in that representation. What would be your message to a young child growing up in Africa and growing up anywhere in the world and thinking about going into these heights of power and strong institutions as you have? What would be your message to motivate that particular individual?
Funny enough, as a very, very young girl, I used to have this journal at school where I used to write, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. That was the young girl child in me. I mean, writing that from an early age. And I believed in that. And so I set my dreams high, and I realized that for everything that I had dreamt, it really came to pass. And if we translate it biblically, according to Habakkuk 2, verse 2-3, where Habakkuk talks about how if you write the vision down and make it plain on a tablet, it may take time, but it will surely come to pass at an appointed time. So for me, it's the power of dreams. It's a power of vision, of articulating your vision very clearly. And what I've realized over time is that if I've written something down as a dream, as a vision beforehand, at an appointed time, it really comes to pass. And that's how my life has been, really. The ability to not have borders or boundaries in my dreams. So that's what I would say to the girl child, that if you can dream it, you can achieve it. The world is there, for your taking, for your making, because if it's not there, you can still make it what you wish for it to be.
Thank you so much, Pumela Salela. It's been an awesome honor and pleasure. Thank you, audience, for joining us today here at SAT Interviews. We've discussed in great depth a number of the motivations that drove this very success story that is Pumela Salela. Please join us next week as we continue this journey of telling Africa's story. Thank you.
Introducing Sawi, the chatbot from Nyaradzo. Speak to Sawi for all your queries and inquiries. The benefits of having Sawi by your side are endless. When you need to know about our policy, Nyaradzo products, payment platforms, claims, the Sawira International Plan, where to find the Nyaradzo branches, Nyaradzo contact details, how to apply, and any questions you may have. And she can help you find who you want to speak to. For your convenience, you can ask about anything, from our funeral services, counseling to your payments, and much more. Experience the benefit of having Sawi by your side. App Sawi today on WhatsApp number 0712 992 892. Nyaradzo, Sawira Mukuru, Omgane Omkulu.